Hello, I'm Glenn White, the Chief Engineer of the NBIS program. DISA has the mission to be the IT service provider to the NBIB organization. They have the mission to perform background investigations. Throughout this briefing and in our supporting documentation, we don't always make a distinction between the IT system mission and the investigation mission, but this division of responsibility should always be understood. Slide 27 summarizes what I want to communicate with you today during my briefing. First is the most important concept of defense in depth in our architecture approach as we apply security at every level. I will go through the basic architecture concepts and discuss the NBIS functionality. I also want to explain the role of all of the organizations that are contributing toward this mission. And I'll conclude with a review of the work that we have done in the NBIS data strategy. Slide 28 is an overview of the mission to support suitability, security, and credentialing, or SSC. The functions highlighted in blue indicate the capabilities that must be supported by the NBIS program. Our partners in DMDC are supporting most of the capabilities identified in pink. The first column, Position Designation, is supported by a web-based tool called the Position Designation Tool, or PDT, that Sheldon described earlier. The third column is supported by our e-application, and the fourth column by our case management. The Validate Need functionality is supported by the DMDC application called DISA. It is in the process of initial fielding and will eventually replace JPass. DISA also supports the adjudication and the post-determination functions. Another DMDC application called SWIFT, or SWFT, supports the collection of fingerprints. DMDC and DISA are planning for support to the entire federal government SSC mission. Many agencies are performing their own adjudications with their own information systems today, but the larger SSC community has a goal to have our portfolio support the entire mission over time. DISA and DMDC are working together to deliver integrated support with a common infrastructure for the SSC mission. Therefore, slide 29 shows an integrated SSC enclave at the deck with a COOP site at a second deck. The infrastructure for data replication, archiving, DBMS, ESB messaging, and user account management is shared across the applications in this SSC enclave. You'll notice that DISA is hosted in two instances, one for DoD and the other for the rest of the federal government. NBIS will not be split in that fashion. Other DMDC applications are hosted at the same deck, but they're not within our common enclave. You'll notice in the blue cloud on the right that we are planning two applications in GovCloud, e-application and PDT. On slide 30, I return to the description of NBIS roles and functions. The bullets list the primary NBIS applications, and their user roles are underlined. The first item is the application that I've discussed before. The second item is our case management, the main deck-based application to conduct the investigation. It contains roles for investigators, their supervisors, and the quality control government managers in order to collect data, distribute work, and collaborate. The NBIS imaging application supports bringing data from paper, email, and other sources into the investigative package. Continued on slide 31 is the NBIS portal is used by agency security officers, NBIB managers, for metrics about how current investigations are progressing or metrics about completed work. We've already discussed the PDT application. We intend to support all users, including investigators, with a VDI online user interface. However, we recognize that there are times when an investigator would want to prepare the results of an interview while offline. So, we want to provide a portable template that can be used with any word processor and uploaded when the investigator is connected. We also recognize that a person with a generic administrative privileges for components in the system have the ability to inflict considerable harm to the system. Therefore, we need to provide a managed capability that will allow them to safely administer their essential role. Slide 32 shows a view of the NBIS high-level system architecture. One of the new concepts in this view is the legacy data repository. We've made a decision that we will not import data from the legacy environment into the data tables of the new system. However, that data is needed as a read-only reference to the previous investigations while conducting a new investigation. Therefore, we will provide a read-only view of the required legacy data. This chart also shows our concept of how we should organize the investigative data repositories. We will need to provide a storage for the data entered by the subject of the investigation until it is completed and reviewed. After that point, it becomes part of an open investigation. We're exploring options for storing this data either in the GovCloud or in a cache in the DEC. The investigations themselves would be divided into instances of the database for active or closed investigations, and the reason for this will be discussed later in this briefing. The next 3 slides highlight the contributions of our partners in the SSC mission. We fully intend to use the new DISA VDI implementation with the goal of improving our security posture and achieving the goal of being end-user device agnostic. We are still exploring the alternatives, but we are trying to give the fewest restrictions on the client devices as possible while minimizing system vulnerabilities. We will utilize the full package of DEC services under the Capacity Services offering. We anticipate hosting a development and test environment in a DEC, as well as a pre-production and production enclave. We will definitely use the full resources of DISA operations, working with JFHQ DODN as summarized on the next slide. Slide 34 is an overview of how end-to-end situation awareness and command and control are achieved via a suite of capabilities focused on internal defense and perimeter defense. This robust capability to defend the DODN is the primary reason that DoD got the mission to rebuild the background investigation IT capability. However, this significant resource is not sufficient to achieve our goal of a secure system. We must build security at every level of the architecture by utilizing the considerable resources provided by DISA operations and JFHQ DODN and structuring NBIS for a least privilege approach for application functionality, data access, and administrative functions as identified in this briefing. Continued on slide 35, it has been our goal from the beginning to avoid redundant functionality and share infrastructure across the SSC portfolio, which initially contains DMDC's DIS and SWIFT programs and DISA's NBIS program. Other applications may be added in the future. This slide lists the capabilities that will be provided by DISA DIS application and SWIFT in support of the OPM or NBIB background investigation mission, including application functionality in the first sub-bullet. We also share DIS program infrastructure that will be directly utilized by the NBIS application. We will use a common account management, data replication, auditing, and archive capabilities. We'll likely use the common ESB for secure, guaranteed delivery of investigative products to the agencies that do not use DIS for adjudication. Slide 36 identifies 9 protection zones, each with their own set of functions and specific data controls. In order for data to move from one zone to another, specific control processes must be successfully executed. Examples of business rules enforced in specific zones are as follows. First, data collected from external sources must be captured, checked for harmful content, validated for accuracy and/or trustworthiness, and associated with an open investigation before it is allowed to be written to the active case. Also, a restrictive, non-PII view of active and closed cases is available to the NBIS portal in the Management and Agency zones. Fifth, a closed case may be reopened at the request of the adjudicator during the adjudication process if additional information is required. Finally, when an investigation is initiated, a copy of the most recent closed case will be attached to the new investigation, and data from the subject's last application is used to pre-populate the new application. Zones 8 and 9 are related to administrative functions in the development, pre-production, and production hosting environments. The full set of protections in the 9 zones are documented in our NBIS Conceptual System Architecture, our Cybersecurity Architecture, and the Data Strategy. These are not publicly released yet, but will be part of future discussions about scoping target solutions. Slide 37 summarizes what we are trying to accomplish in 3 rapid prototyping efforts. With our overall effort to deliver a secure and effective NBIS capability in the least amount of time, we've been attempting to accomplish essential pre-acquisition tasks in parallel that are traditionally done sequentially. There is an associated BPR effort to change the process that is not well defined in its current state. We are trying to define governance structures, regulatory requirements, architecture definition, operational concepts, programmatic relationships among interdependent organizations, and much more, all in parallel. So our architecture and modeling effort captures the first level of understanding about what the system should be. But the prototypes extend that understanding with demonstrations of functionality and infrastructure components that can be used to unambiguously define the target system for users in the future. Finally, starting with slide 38, I want to introduce you to the NBIS data strategy. The goals of the data strategy are listed in this slide. Slide 39 captures the structure of the data strategy as a conceptual model with a common profile. This work is already a significant document, but it is not yet complete. It is being actively worked in consultation with Slide 40 identifies the fact that an investigation is composed of a list of data components. The first 21 data components are inputs that are provided by the subject of the investigation. Another 63 data elements are investigative items that are collected from sources that each have their own validation and verification processes, automated and manual reviews, and data handling requirements. One of the investigative items is shown in the next 2 slides. Slides 41 and 42 show the example of an exchange profile for the Bureau of Vital Statistics. As contained in the description field, the purpose of this investigative item is to verify the birth record for date and place of birth of the subject. You may notice that there are 4 potential exchange mechanisms that may be used until a successful verification is accomplished. Notice the mechanism of last resort is the use of a voucher. This is a paper document where a trusted person vouches for the validity of an investigative item. Continued on slide 42, the business rules outlining the required behavior of the target system. For an overview of the functionality required of the NBIS, please consult the Federal Investigation Standards published by DNI and OPM. The content of the 5 tiers of investigation are contained in detail in this document. Thank you for your interest in the NBIS effort. I hope that you now have some insight into the mission that we are supporting and the multiple efforts that we are working to capture a clear understanding of our functional and technical requirements. you know that background investigation is one component of the SSC mission. In order to deliver the most effective, efficient, and secure capability, we are working as an integrated team with all of DISA and DMDC. We are looking forward to talking to you in the one-on-one sessions to get your insight on recommendations for the issues that should be considered as we define the approach to delivering this critical capability to the U.S. government.